Captain Shirley Russell was not just a Marine, she was really the embodiment of the Corps' highest ideals. Semper Fidelis, always faithful. Those words were etched into her very being. In the demanding world of Quantico, Virginia, she was a beacon of dedication, a respected officer known for her sharp mind and unwavering commitment. Colleagues saw a woman with a future as bright as the polished brass on her uniform. She was a trailblazer, a computer expert in a field dominated by men, navigating her career with a grace and strength that earned her admiration at every turn. But even the strongest among us can be, well, vulnerable to the dangers that lurk not on a distant battlefield, but much, much closer to home. Her life was a picture of discipline and order. Early mornings, long days, a relentless pursuit of excellence. She was on a path to promotion, a rising star in the United States Marine Corps. Friends described her as meticulous, someone who planned every detail, who left nothing to chance. It was this very predictability, this structured existence that would make her sudden absence all the more jarring, all the more terrifying. The neat lines of her life were about to be violently erased, leaving behind a chaotic scrawl of questions and fear. A life so carefully constructed was about to come undone in the most perplexing way imaginable. Captain Russell had filed for a transfer, a move that would take her far from Quantico, far from the life she had built there. It was a decision she seemed determined to see through. Was she running toward a new opportunity, or was she running from something, or someone? The paperwork was in, the future was set, a new chapter was supposed to begin, but as the sun set on that ordinary day in early 1989, no one could have known it was her last. No one could have predicted that this dedicated officer was about to march into a mystery from which she would never return. The Marine Corps is a family, a brotherhood and sisterhood bound by a shared code of honor and protection. When one of their own goes missing, the institution itself feels the wound. The disappearance of Captain Russell wasn't just a missing person case, it was an affront to that sacred bond. An officer doesn't simply vanish from one of the most secure military bases in the world without a trace. It just doesn't happen. And yet, it did. The silence she left behind was deafening, a void that would soon be filled with dark suspicion and a desperate search for answers. The day was March 4th, 1989, a Saturday. Captain Russell was supposed to report for duty, a routine assignment she would never miss. But she didn't show up. Her car, a gray Chevrolet Cavalier, was found abandoned on the side of the I-95 exit ramp just a short distance from the Quantico base. The keys were still in the ignition, her purse was on the seat. Everything looked almost normal, as if she had just stepped away for a moment. But that moment stretched into an hour, then a day, then an eternity. It was a scene frozen in time, a silent testament to a life interrupted. Investigators descended upon the scene, their minds racing through the possibilities. A carjacking, an abduction by a stranger. The evidence, or lack thereof, offered no easy answers. The car was undisturbed, with no signs of a struggle, no broken windows, no immediate clues to what had transpired. It was as if she had simply evaporated into thin air. For a woman known for her punctuality and rigid adherence to protocol, this was the loudest alarm bell imaginable. Captain Shirley Russell was not someone who broke the rules. Something was terribly, horribly wrong. Her husband, fellow Marine Captain Robert Russell, was the one who reported her missing. He told authorities that she had left their home that morning after an argument. He claimed she packed a bag and drove off, angry. It was a plausible story, on the surface. Marital disputes happen, people need time to cool off. But as investigators began to dig, the story started to feel less like a simple explanation, and more like a carefully constructed narrative. The details just didn't seem to fit the woman everyone knew Captain Shirley Russell to be. The search began, a massive effort involving local police, military investigators, and soon, the FBI. They combed the dense woods surrounding Quantico, scanned the murky waters of the nearby river, and chased down every lead. But there was nothing. No footprints, no discarded items, no witnesses who saw her leave the car. It was a perfect vacuum of information. The highway where her car was found was a major artery, teeming with traffic. How could a woman disappear from such a public place without a single person noticing? The question hung heavy in the Virginia air. All eyes soon turned toward the man at the center of the storm, Captain Robert Russell. His behavior in the days following his wife's disappearance struck many as odd, to say the least. He seemed detached, almost unconcerned. While others were frantic with worry, he was observed cleaning his house with an unusual intensity. He even went so far as to get rid of the couple's mattress just days after Shirley vanished. He claimed it was just part of a pre-planned redecoration, but to investigators it looked like someone methodically erasing a crime scene, scrubbing away the past. Then came the physical evidence, or what little there was of it. Inside the Russell home, investigators discovered a curious stain on the carpet. It was faint, almost invisible to the naked eye, but it was there. When tested, the stain gave a presumptive positive result for the presence of blood. Though technology at the time couldn't definitively prove it was Shirley's, the discovery was chilling. It painted a grim picture of a potential struggle inside the very place she should have been safest. A home that was supposed to be a sanctuary now felt like a tomb. Robert Russell's story began to fray at the edges. He told conflicting tales to friends and authorities. He claimed Shirley had left him, but then he also began selling her belongings. He seemed to be moving on with his life with an unnerving speed. His alibi for the time of her disappearance was flimsy, relying on his own word and little else. The more questions investigators asked, the more his answers seemed to shift, to bend, to avoid the hard edges of the truth. He was a man surrounded by a fog of suspicion, a fog he seemed to be creating himself. The picture grew darker still when investigators uncovered Robert's history. This wasn't just a troubled marriage, it was a volatile one. Friends and colleagues came forward with stories of his explosive temper, his controlling nature, and his history of domestic violence. Shirley had reportedly told friends she was afraid of him, that she was planning to leave him for good. The transfer she had filed for was not just a career move, it was an escape plan. Suddenly, her disappearance didn't seem so random. It started to look like the final tragic act in a long and hidden war. The investigation was stuck, caught in a legal quagmire. The prosecution faced a monumental challenge, perhaps the biggest one in any homicide case. They had no body. Without Captain Russell's remains, there was no definitive proof that a murder had even occurred. There was no crime scene in the traditional sense, just a few ambiguous clues. There was no murder weapon, nothing to link a suspect directly to the act of violence. And crucially, there were no witnesses. No one saw what happened, no one heard a scream. The entire case was built on a foundation of circumstantial evidence. The FBI took a deeper dive, piecing together a timeline not just of the disappearance, but of Robert Russell's life. They discovered a man with a pattern of violence. Years earlier, another woman had accused him of a brutal assault, an incident that was eerily similar to what they suspected had happened to Shirley. But the most damning discovery was a piece of paper, a to-do list of sorts found among Robert's possessions. On it was a chilling, handwritten plan. It detailed steps like get a gun, dig a grave, and how to commit the perfect murder. It was a blueprint for death. Despite the mounting circumstantial evidence, the bloodstain, the suspicious behavior, the violent history, and the murder plan, the case was a prosecutor's nightmare. Could they convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that a man was a murderer when the victim herself was nowhere to be found? It's a principle of justice that you are innocent until proven guilty, but how do you prove a ghost was murdered? The lack of a body created a void that doubt could easily fill. The search for Shirley continued, but hope of finding her alive had long since faded. The search was now for justice. Decades have passed since that cold day in 1989. Robert Russell was eventually convicted of his wife's murder, a rare legal victory in a no-body case. But the final chapter of this story remains unwritten. He has never revealed what he did, never admitted his guilt, never given Shirley's family the small comfort of knowing her final resting place. Captain Shirley Russell, a dedicated Marine who served her country, remains missing. Her ghost haunts the edges of this case, a silent reminder that even when a verdict is read, some questions may never be answered, and some mysteries may endure forever.